This is a production of the City of Barrie Network. Please take a moment at the end of this video to acknowledge the local businesses that support your community.
Before I move on to our speaker, I really want to highlight that this curriculum was done with consultation. As you know, 4,000 parents, 2,400 educators, 700 students, and over 170 organizations were consulted before the curriculum was brought in. Not to mention thousands of constituents and people voicing their concerns through their MPs, through their government officials over the many years that it took to make this curriculum. Furthermore, a lot of the anger about this curriculum is based around the concept of gender identity and sexuality, and these things exist in our society, and it's unacceptable to tell youth that they don't exist and that they're not valid.
So we called on these guests because they come from a variety of experiences and backgrounds in terms of the work that they do. We had educators and teachers, we had sexual health advocates, we had people who work in violence against women, we had youth, and we had parents of both LGBTQ youth and just youth in general to talk about the various ways that they come at this curriculum and why they support the updated curriculum and the continued update of the curriculum.
The problem with the 1998 curriculum, it doesn't speak to what's happening in our community right now. It is literally going backwards.
I don't really want to say too much because, to be honest, I'm really here to support my daughter because guess what? She's the youth, she's our future, and what she has to say matters.
7 years after I started school, I was even told in school what genitals were and how to reproduce. This last school year, I had one day with half of an episode of a puberty video, the process of being a baby being born, things in puberty that can affect our lives, crushes, physical changes, gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and who you're sexually and romantically attracted to. We also really didn't get into what pride and LGBTQ+ was. Sad by how the teacher didn't say like LGBT or pride or anything to do with that. When I came out as homosexual to the people I trusted, after a rumor started that I was, pretty much the whole school made fun of me, called me faggot, lesbian, and some inhumane things. But imagine the kids and youth that didn't know about this, struggling with their gender identity, who they loved, thinking they're bleeding to death because they don't even know what a period is. Like, my best friend didn't even know what a period was, so imagine how hard it would be if they hit puberty and struggled with their identity and had no clue what it was. Maybe they're thinking that they're gross and disgusting because of who they are, but this is exactly what's going to happen with the 1998 health curriculum.
More education is needed. The education that I got in high school was very limited to next to nothing. Nowadays, everybody is around with cell phones and everything's at their fingertips. Why we need to change in class so that people are aware of what's online to be able to grow as a community and educate those that are willing to learn.
20 years ago in high school, I decided to come out. I kind of regretted doing it because the sex ed class that I had was just simply watch a video, and the students decided that they wanted to ask questions. The questions that were asked were various, between genitalia to sex to BDSM, and for some reason the one question that I had and was read out loud, everybody knew that it was me, and I didn't understand why they knew it was me, and they became ridiculed. They ridiculed me for asking such a question. It actually put me back a couple of years in coming out.
We need kids to feel supported. We need them to feel like they belong, and the idea that we're not even allowed to mention things like sexual orientation or same-sex marriage is just completely outrageous to me.
I was a typical rebellious teenage girl from the late 90s. I was insecure, vulnerable, and naive. So much so that when in grade 9 I went to a school dance and a boy randomly passed me on the dance floor, lifted my skirt, and groped my butt. I said nothing, and I apologized to him. In 1998, consent was not a concept discussed in school. In 2015, teachers were entrusted to discuss consent with their students, and not just teenagers being told to fight back when attacked by sexual predators, by starting in the earliest grades by teaching kids that their bodies are their own. No one has a right to touch you if you do not want to be touched. Study after study shows us that the earlier we start teaching this to kids, the more of an impact it has on their lives. Teachers can dramatically change a society by empowering those at the lowest level to ensure that no one ever again has to say the words, "me too."
You know, there's always been pressure for kids to be sexually active. Relationships are huge as a teenager, but now that's 24 hours a day. They're online all the time. There's texting. There's a lot of pressure to be sharing sexual pictures. And you know, kids need support in having a language to talk about that. They need support to figure that out. And this curriculum is not about taking away parents' roles. They're welcome to talk about all these issues at home. But the reality is that many parents may not feel comfortable doing so.
I just want to speak from my experience about why I think that the curriculum is very, very important. I'm a social science teacher, so I teach mostly grade 11 and 12 classes. And in those classes, one of the things that I always do is bring in speakers to talk about healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships, because it fits into that curriculum as well. And we'll talk about you know, so the kids are learning about consent, they're learning about sexting and things like that from outside experts. And I'm consistently told, this has been 7 or 8 years that I've done this in most of my classes, and I'm consistently told from students that it's one of the most valuable lessons that they have all curriculum, or all semester long, because these are big issues in kids' lives. Teens are, you know, relationships are very, very, very important, and there's so much going on. I think all of us can remember back to being teenagers. It's not an easy time. There's so much change going on in your body, and you're trying to figure out your role in society. And they need a common language. They need support from the adults in their lives.
Curriculum as it is now was developed after tons of consultation with parents, experts, mental health advocates, psychologists. So there was a lot of work that went into it, and it was working. It was teaching the kids the right thing. I have 3 kids right now in local elementary schools, and I was very happy with what they're being taught and how they're being taught.
I know how outrageous it is to teach a curriculum from 1998 in the year 2018. I'm here because I know that we need to say no to repealing a curriculum that is working, one that's educating our children and keeping them safe. And I'm here to say a loud no to Doug Ford and his right-wing agenda. Doug Ford wants to vilify parents like my wife and I. He wants to paint us as being in favor of a radical agenda. Well, I think that's pretty rich, coming from a man who sold out to the radical right in order to get elected. So am I radical? Are we radical? Well, let's just go through a couple examples of what Doug Ford thinks is radical. And this is taken right from the curriculum that's being taught right now. So my son's right here, he just finished grade 1. And what he learned in grade 1, he learned to recognize caring behaviors like listening with respect and being helpful, as well as exploitive behaviors like inappropriate touching, abuse, and bullying. My oldest daughter just finished grade 6, where she learned to use problem solving and decision-making skills to address healthy relationships and consent. I don't think that's radical at all.
The new curriculum teaches students how to navigate the internet era. That wasn't in the 1998 curriculum due to the rapid development of technology in the past 20 years. Most students now, even in grade school, have smartphones, have access to iPads and technology, and are on the internet, and we need to be teaching them how to be safe.
My teen years, as you can imagine, were a confusing time filled with shame and self-hatred. I had my first crush on a girl about a year later, and I squashed and buried that butterfly as quick as I could, terrified by the idea of being gay. It took me years to internalize this fear that my peers and my family had contributed to. The sex ed portion of my health and physical education at my Catholic high school was 2 days long. Do you want to know what I learned? What stuck with me in those 2 days? Sex hurts for girls, and you will bleed. And a 2-hour-long video on the power of abstinence. Absolutely nothing was mentioned about the LGBTQ community. There was no lesson on proper consent. There was no education on contraceptives. As a now proud bisexual woman, the 2015 curriculum would have provided me with more information on my sexuality, as well as taught me things like how to navigate birth control and how to properly take care of my body.
Before we really jump into this, I don't want to go on talking about the recall of the sex education curriculum without first drawing attention to the fact that this same ministry and this same government has also canceled work on the Indigenous curriculum. Today we are gathered to remind ourselves and the Conservative government that sex education saves lives. It is crucial to empower and to educate youth on the importance of consent, on the truth of gender and sexual expression, and the importance of safe sex. By doing this, we are giving students the tools they need to feel safe and to live a healthy and happy life while being whoever they are. Did you know that the most sexual assaults happen within the first 8 weeks of the school year? That half of self-reported sexual assaults are against people aged 15 to 24. Did you know that Indigenous women are 3 times more likely to be victims of violence than non-Indigenous women? And did you know that 21% of students have reported having at least one unwanted sexual experience at some point in their life? And these are the reported statistics. Without a modern sex education, queer and trans students will sit in classrooms and in playgrounds across the province feeling excluded and isolated from their peers. Students will grow up not understanding the importance of consent and acts that may lead to them becoming perpetrators of sexual violence or a survivor of it. Without modern sex education, we are failing the current and future students of this province and actively isolating the most marginalized youth in our communities.
I am a huge fan of the latest curriculum. It's a very comprehensive document. I read it from start to finish, and it equips our children with what I consider to be a world-class health and physical education curriculum. I see no very good reason for rolling it back, and I think if we roll it back, we'll be removing resources that our children desperately need.
Do we have any grade 8? Anyone just finished grade 8? Any grade schoolers here? Put your hands up. If you guys think that you can't change the world, you can. I want to tell you very briefly about 2 grade 8 Ontario students. Their names are Tessa Hill and Leah Valenti. And a couple of years ago, it was a grade 8 class project. They started the campaign called We Give Consent. And their goal was to get the topic of consent onto the Ontario health curriculum in schools. Their campaign, it got 40,000 signatures. It got the attention of the Ontario government. They met with the Premier. And as a result of their work and the work of many people like them, consent was on the curriculum, and Ontario developed a world-class health education system. Now, when it was published, of course, a lot of people had some strong opinions about it, and so I read it cover to cover to see what the fuss was about. I thought it was going to be okay. It turned out it was far more than that. It was excellent. I discovered a document that talked about physical literacy, financial literacy, critical thinking, integrated learning, one that talked about consent and about respect. I found a document that talked about raising physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and spiritually healthy children. One that acknowledged that we must do all of this through collaboration between students, parents, teachers, and community. But most of all, I found a curriculum that values our children. It teaches them that they have a right to be treated with dignity and respect. And it teaches them how to interact with each other, physically, verbally, and online, in compassionate and respectful ways. So if you haven't read the curriculum, the 2015 one, I really recommend do it. It's a great resource, whether you're a parent or a teacher or an educator or just someone who cares about health in your community. So as a parent, let me say this. The 2015 curriculum is something that we can be proud of as Ontarians. It's a world-class curriculum, and one that will prepare our children well to live in a diverse and complex world. It's better in every single way than the 1998 version.
I think it's just so unfortunate that we are taking so many steps backwards. We live in a very diverse country, more diverse than ever, and we need to educate our young people about everything, gender, consent, sexuality. Everything needs to be on the table. Some parents like myself are very comfortable talking about that, but there are others who just aren't. So we need our educators to be empowered and to be able to have those conversations.
We are an organization dedicated to women's safety and gender equality. We are extremely concerned about the announcement by the Ministry of Education to roll back Ontario's sexual health education curriculum in the upcoming school year. We believe we should be loud and outspoken about the consequences of this decision. We know that a wide-ranging sexual health education that is inclusive, rights-based, and promotes gender equality is essential in preventing violence against women. And there is increasing evidence that a curriculum that includes education on consent and healthy relationships will support the prevention of violence against women and advance gender equality.
This is great. While raising our voices is great, we have to follow it up with action. The words tonight, use them in your letters, in your phone calls, and in your meetings with your MPPs. Write to your MPPs, call them, visit their office. They have to listen to you. You are their constituents. They owe you time to listen to your concerns and to your comments about this curriculum and about other issues. Second, write to the school boards. Write to them and tell them that you want them to write a statement and affirm this curriculum for all of their teachers. They have that ability. At least 3 other school boards have done that in Ontario. So if the government will not stand up for this curriculum, then our local government most certainly can. And third, stay engaged. Follow up with different organizations and people who are doing this work. And talk to your children, absolutely. Talk to your children, talk to your families about this at the dinner table. We need to have more conversations. What do we want? From when do we want it? What do we want? From when do we want it? Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.